Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story. Hi, and welcome to the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. I always say that I am excited when I interview people, but today, really, I am excited because I actually had the opportunity to be on Danielle Kelly's podcast, Chaos and Caffeine, a couple of months ago. And Danielle, I have to tell you, and I'm being 100% honest, your interview is one of the most fun interviews I've ever had. Like, I could literally see us sitting and having coffee and enjoying each other. And she would want to invite me to come on and talk about neurodiversity in seniors because Danielle's audience is parents with children. She herself has ADHD and is raising an ADHD child, I believe, is one, right? And so I'll let her tell her story because my memory is a sieve, as anyone with ADHD knows. I remember sitting in my car and talking to you, and we totally went down the woo-woo path, but I can't remember how many kids you have. But just for the occasion, I have my copy in hand, and it's not fake. There's coffee in there. And it says, Mama needs some coffee.
Always.
So, yeah, thank you. And I want to just say this. The reason that I wanted to invite Danielle onto the podcast is, like me, she also has realized that she was raised by neurodiverse parents. So I'm going to let you share your story. So welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. And I also enjoyed our very casual woo-woo conversation.
It was great. And I have to say this, I did not expect it. When you hear Danielle, you can clearly tell that she is living in the South. And having grown up in the Bible Belt, I just assumed that you're going to be a very Southern Baptist. That accent screams Southern Baptist, but that was absolutely not the case. And we totally had a spiritual connection. I loved it. But okay. So that out of the way, give me your journey. How did you get to where you are? Tell me a little bit about how you discovered your ADHD. And then, of course, we'll talk about the podcast. And then I'm going to talk about your parents and all of that. So a lot to cover.
The funny thing is, throughout my life, I thought that everyone else had ADHD and I was neurotypical. And when I was around 35 and I started filling out my son's paperwork, I was like, oh man, I definitely have inattentive ADHD. And so my journey kind of starts backwards. I started with positive parenting, which made ADHD parenting much easier than normal, we'll say. And so by the time we got the diagnosis, I was kind of not blown away. We had just found our rhythm, and the only trouble that we were experiencing was school. And so after years of learning and taking in as much as I could, I had started an ADHD parenting group. And then we started having these amazing workshops with guest speakers. And I thought, what's it called? Gatekeeping these people from the world. They need to be on a larger platform where everyone can soak up this ADHD parenting knowledge. So that's where the podcast came from.
Nice. Okay. So you grew up thinking that everybody was thinking like you. When did you realize that that was the case?
I honestly, as I said when you came on my podcast, I had a spiritual awakening in 2021 and I started meditating and working on me. And I think when you sit down to meditate that first time and your brain is going, 100 miles a minute in all different directions, it's kind of like, oh, I can't sit here and focus on my breath because I'm thinking about the weather, the news, what I need to do in 10 minutes, how long is this going to last? You go through all the things. And then it just kind of dawned on me. I got in trouble a lot in school for daydreaming, not being on task. And it all just made sense in my late 30s.
Okay. So, what would you say the rest of your childhood looked like now that you know the difference between neurotypical and neurodiverse?
A thing that sticks out is the anxiety that comes with a brain that won't turn off.
Uh-huh.
I remember distinctly all of the worrying, as a kid about losing elders and things that were really far off in the future, but I was worried about them constantly at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, the daydreaming, getting in trouble for doodling in class and not being in the actual lecture for sure. Now that I'm 40, I can say it out loud. Trouble keeping and maintaining friendships. That is still a struggle that I'm working on currently.
Okay, so maintaining friendships, let's dive into that. So, would you say it's because you forget to follow up and make plans, and so then friendships fall away? Yeah, you're nodding your head, yes.
For sure.
For me, I am the person that I say whatever's on my mind, and some people cannot handle that. And so, what I have discovered is the people in my life, for the most part, have been in my life, some since middle school, because they know what you see is what you get. And there are definitely people where I am not their flavor. And now at least I have an understanding of why.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely falling off and not keeping in touch, getting distracted by something shiny, and I'm off to the next thing. But yes, for sure, learning that my impulsive mouth, as you said, I say things that come in here and then they pop out here. And for so long, I thought, well, that's how I want people to treat me. I want people to be blunt and upfront and honest with me. So that must be how everyone else wants to be treated. Turns out it is not. And a quote sticks out to me about that a lot. Treat people how they want to be treated and not how you want to be treated was kind of a pivotal turning point for me on that.
Yeah. Wow. So,
Meditation
would you
helps
say
her.
that you've gotten, you know what? I'm so impressed, and it keeps coming up for me, meditation, meditation. And I'll be honest with you, I say I'm going to do it. And I've tried. It's torture for me. It's like the big joke in a entrepreneur group. They wanted to start with a daily meditation whenever we would get together. And I'd be like, can we not, or can we keep it like short? Because let's do 10 minutes. I'm like, I can't do 10 minutes. I wanted to share, you were speaking about the friendship thing. Have you read Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, yet?
I have
Yeah,
not.
yes.
I am an avid listener of her podcast, so I have heard that over and over. And yes, I adore her in general.
So she shares, and she has ADHD as well. She shares in her book that she was sitting down and sees on social media that her friend group from when they raised kids together had all gone on a girls' trip. And she looks at the pictures and she sees all of the people in the trip, and she's hurt, as any of us would be, to think I've been left out of. And then she steps back from it. She's bringing in this theory and she's like, but I haven't followed up with these friendships. I haven't stayed in touch with them. So this isn't about me. And when it's kind of like, just like with ADHD, it's out of sight, out of mind. And if you're not making your friends a priority, they are going to move on. And it's not a reflection of who you are. It's just out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the friendship struggle. I am sure you're aware that social anxiety is the biggest co-occurrence with ADHD.
Mm,
Did you know that?
agreed. I did not know that, but it makes total sense. Even my son,
No, go ahead.
even my son, I think about this often. Like today, he's in summer camp. He's been going for 2 weeks. He has an absolute blast once he's there.
Mm-hmm.
But the anxiety about going is too much. Even for the park or the trampoline park or birthday parties. I'm like, if I could just get him there, he's going to have the time of his life. But he's like, Mom, what if I don't have fun? Or what if they don't like me? Or all of those things. And I'm watching it with him at 10, and I'm glad to have a little bit more coping skills and a little bit more knowledge to pour into him. But it starts at a really, really young age.
Do you know, so I didn't realize that I had it until I listened to the book Small Talk by Roxanne Pink and Richard, her husband. And I don't remember what her story was, but I looked back at my childhood and I remember now giving my toys away to friends because I wanted them to like me. And I thought if I gave them my toys, they would like me. And I was actually the reason that I was kind of late to our podcast. I hike on Tuesday mornings with a good friend of mine. We've raised our kids together since kindergarten. And she was telling me that one of her kids had charged $500 on Uber Eats and that she was sure she's going to pay back. But she said she was sure that she had been purchasing food for her friends. And that reminded me of me giving away my toys. And I'm like, 'cause her daughter has ADHD as well,
Yeah.
and I just sort of said, hey, probably what she's doing. And there's just, I don't know, even from a young age. So it's not even trauma, but just this, I'm worried people aren't going to like me. It's a hard part.
It's really sad for my kid to see that. I think it comes from that feeling that he is already experiencing of I'm too much. Like I'm too impulsive or I'm too hyperactive or I'm too this. And so he's already starting to he's already internalizing that.
I do feel like we are magnified. I feel like when I describe it, because I definitely resonate with the too much statement, as I think a lot of people who have ADHD that feels it. And it's just nothing is slow. Like it might not be that our bodies move because I actually am combined type, but a lot of my guests are inattentive, especially women tend to be more inattentive. So they're not hyperactive. You don't see the fidgeting going on all the time. Their brains are just so fast. And then you have so much to say and so much to do, and there's so much energy. So yeah, I hate that. I hate that. And that's one of the reasons I think that both of us are probably out in this ADHD space to say, hey, this is how we were made. This is who we were meant to be. And let's channel this energy into something that's going to really benefit the world.
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely agree.
Awesome. Okay. So I definitely want to touch on being raised by ADHD parents and how do they know that you think they have ADHD, like all of that stuff. But before we move on to that, I love that big smile. If you're listening, she just like lit up with that big smile seeing it on YouTube, which I want to say this. I'm going to just defend my situation with the background so that you know what's going on. I have the worst Wi-Fi in this house, and we have tried to fix it with booster. It's an older house, and it wasn't made when the time that we were thinking about Wi-Fi. So the only place in my home that is quiet that I also get decent Wi-Fi is in my 17-year-old daughter's room, who happens to have ADHD. So I have to put a background up because that's definitely, I do have a beautiful setting in my office that I would love to be using for these podcasts, but I can't get a good enough signal. So if you are seeing me, you're seeing this like a virtual background behind me, but that's a problem I've got to solve. And when we have ADHD, that's so many tasks that I have to do. I have to like figure out how to get the Wi-Fi, and then I have to get the right drop so that, and then what happens is perfect is the enemy of done. And so then we just won't do anything because if it's not, we're worried that people are going to judge us. So I've been very open about, I'm going to be me so you can be you. So I just wanted to kind of give you that space. So, okay. So anything that you want to share before we move on to what it was like for you to be raised by ADHD parents and how that's all gone, that conversation.
We may need to save the last 40 minutes for that entire conversation. I'm not sure 40 minutes would be enough to even. I will say this is my very first podcast interview on someone else's podcast, and for sure my first and only video podcast interview. So no judgment at all.
Well, you're beautiful. You're absolutely beautiful.
So much.
Do you mean no judgment of my background? Is that what you were saying?
No judgment of anything, but yeah, at all.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to take a pause, and then we come back. Danielle's going to share her experience of being raised by an ADHD parent and how all that conversation is going. So just stay with us. And if you are enjoying this podcast, Please like it. It helps to build the audience. Share it and subscribe to it. It's Grandma Has ADHD. And, I am doing everything that I can to get the message out that people 50 and over should not be left out of the ADHD conversation. And we are not broken. We are not too much. This is the way we were made to be. And I want to help you embrace that. So, all right. Are you tired of feeling like you can't get it together? Struggling with clutter that overwhelms you despite your best efforts? Wondering why organization feels impossible while others make it look so easy? You're not alone, and it's not your fault. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, host of the Grandma Has ADHD podcast, and I understand exactly what you're going through. I combine my years of hands-on work as founder of Silver Linings Transitions, a move management and home organizing company, together with ADHD coach training, and help adults 50 and over connect the dots between ADHD and lifelong struggles. Whether you're downsizing, decluttering, or simply trying to create systems that work for your ADHD brain, I provide virtual and in-person coaching for those in the San Diego area. Together, we'll develop practical strategies that honor how your brain actually works, not how you think it should work. Ready to trade shame for understanding? Visit grandmahasadhd.com or call to schedule a discovery session at 760-607-7377, because it's never too late to finally make sense of your story. Ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized. We'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com. And we are back with Danielle Kelly. She is the podcast host of Chaos and Caffeine. She is an ADHDer herself. She's raising a 10-year-old son with ADHD. But I invited her onto this podcast because you have one parent. I think you said two parents with ADHD, didn't you?
Both, yes.
Yes, she's nodding. You can't nod because people will be listening on no, that's okay. As she shared, not used to doing the YouTube. She's used to just doing it by voice. So I also forgot to turn on my do not disturb. So there's that squirrel. So I'm going to turn that on. Here's a real in the real world. Okay. So two parents with ADHD. And as Danielle nodded her head, yes. And that was also my experience. I was so excited because I've had people who have a parent with ADHD, but not people who've had both parents. So take me back to your childhood. And then first of all, do your parents, I think they must know that they have ADHD at this point, given that you're hosting a podcast.
I was very surprised. My mom did not find out until she started watching my TikTok content and realized that everything I was saying applied to her. So she learned very recently. But when I was talking to my dad about my son, he said something that let me know that he knew that he had ADHD. And he said something to the effect of, "Where do you think he gets it from?" And I was thinking, what does he mean? We were at his shop at the time. He owns a car dealership with an attached garage. And he was like, "Look around." He was like, "Have you ever seen a garage this clean, this organized?" He's like, "OCD is part of ADHD." And that was eye-opening for me because he had never mentioned that he had it. He had never brought it up, but reflecting on it all, in the 90s, I'm assuming they were stressed out parents, but he also, to me, looking back on it as a 40-year-old, I can see he was very emotionally dysregulated. The smallest thing could send our day in a different way. And now I have the terminology and the awareness of what that is. But to a smaller child, it's like, dad's having a moment. And my mom
So
is
the
kind of
walking on
scattered.
eggshells.
Yes, which could be part of my anxiety.
And that's just it. You can see the trauma, the family, how we pass that down because you were
Yes.
emotionally dysregulated. You're emotionally dysregulated by nature, but then you were also raised in an environment with emotional dysregulation. And then, of course, we pass it. So you're stopping the cycle. And so kudos. He's lucky to have that awareness. And I've said that to my 17-year-old because she's the only child that I have raised since understanding my own ADHD. It's just been eye-opening as a parent to see so much of her behavior that was my behavior.
Yeah.
So anyway, there I am going off on my
No,
tangent. Okay, so
you're
your
probably
father was OCD and your mother was scattered.
scattered.
And so did she miss appointments? What was it like being raised by a mom with ADHD?
I hope that she's not watching this, but up until she recognized that she had ADHD and started treatment, it's like she could never get it together. Her life is just in a chaotic ocean, and she's just now finding her lifeboat.
I've actually used those words when I was raising 3 children at home before I knew I had ADHD and I was married. And I was missing parent teacher conferences and my house wasn't running in an orderly way. And I remember using the words, I can't seem to get it together.
Yeah.
So I actually hope your mom is listening and I'll tell you why. Because I think that there's a lot of our mothers and our fathers, especially our mothers, because the responsibility of running a household tended to fall on them. And they're probably carrying the shame. I just didn't do a good job. I know my mom definitely has it. And so I think when they understand, like, there was nothing that you really could have done. It's like until you have the tools and you have an understanding. So stop blaming yourself. And when you know better, you do better, to quote Maya Angelou. And so
Yeah.
let's go from here and let's learn what we can. And let's try to repair and heal the broken relationships and the disappointments. And I have a mom that is open to that. And I have a father that doesn't want to confront anything. So anyway, I think it's important that when we share that, because there are a lot of people like listening. And what I've noticed about ADHD, and you probably see this too, you see kind of both ends of the spectrum. You see people who have like overachieved and accomplished so much, and they've had a billion degrees and a billion careers, and they just go, 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 go. And their hyperactivity is almost their determination to achieve. And then people like my mom, who's brilliant, but couldn't focus on her books and couldn't finish, school and went from job to job. And I hate to use the expression lived up to her potential, but I think that you see those people as well. And all of us are coming to terms with the impact that ADHD, especially undiagnosed, had on our entire life.
Yeah, for sure. I do hope that she listens and I hope that she understands that I'm 40 now and I can extend so much grace. But I don't want to hurt her feelings in the sense that I don't want her to feel like that is how I see her. But that is kind of how I have seen her for 58 years before the diagnosis and the treatment.
So it's interesting because I've asked my kids, I need that validation. What is it that you liked about being raised by me? And they're like, you were fun. Well, I might not have been at your parent teacher conference, but I was funny and fun. And so what would you say you liked about your mom, and now realizing that could have been attributed to her ADHD?
I love so much about her. She is very kind to the planet, to animals, to children. And you are right. She does have that really hyperactive, fun component that my son adores. They get along so well. They have so much fun, and their energy levels are pretty on par.
What I will say, that has been a blessing of the hyperactivity as I'm aging. So my father is hyperactive and my mother is inattentive, and I am combined, which I think is so funny. And my father's energy level, he's 80. I mean, the man can run circles around me. And I'm 55 and my boyfriend is 9 years younger and he can't keep up with me. And I remember my ex-husband, we were the same age. And I'd get up and hit the door and I'd go, 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 go. And it always frustrated me because he just needed the downtime. And again, I didn't know I had ADHD until I was actually separated, which is unfortunate. But I just couldn't understand why he couldn't keep up with me.
Yeah. That
So
is actually
your
my
mom is
son's
hyperactive.
dynamic. I'm inattentive. My co-parent is hyperactive and impulsive for sure. And then my son kind of got the best and or worst parts of both of us.
That is a best and a worst part. So I always ask my guests, probably in the last 10 episodes or so. So Penn Holderness, who was the keynote speaker at the International ADHD Conference, used the example or whatever that he was asked if he could press a button and be done with his ADHD and not have had it. Would he press the button? What would your answer be?
50-50, only because of the anxiety that comes with the race in mind. But the other part of that is my ADHD allows me to think very quickly on my feet, to come out of
Mhm.
possibly catastrophic situations with a creative solution in a matter of seconds. When I was a teenager, my friends attributed that to us getting out of some very sticky situations as rebellious teens. My brain can come up with a way to fix the solution or to fix the problem. And so I'm not sure if those two weigh each other out, but those would be my pros and cons of to press it or not.
And there is a typical ADHD answer. There is no yes or no. You have to have all of the answers. So I will share, speaking of anxiety, I don't like it. And I'm going to be like, I can't believe I'm going to say this online, but again, I think it helps people to relate. So my 3 children, as we're recording this, are an Alaskan cruise with their father. And I know they are supposed to take a helicopter ride. And I just said to him, I really don't want you taking all 3 of my kids in helicopters. My anxiety is really high about that. And so I understand the anxiety. I did say, just text me when it's done because I can't control what he does. We sort of have the my house, my rules divorce. We co-parent well, but I have anxiety. I have these thoughts that I'm like, I don't want to think this, but it happens regularly. Like I catastrophize situation. I put things into my brain that I get. The anxiety is definitely not fun. And Danielle, for those of you who are listening, is nodding her head. You get where I'm going. Like,
Aggressively
that's
nodding.
scary.
Also, something that I did not learn about me until I started doing the work is rumination. I spent
Mhm.
probably the first 30 years of my life in my head having pretend arguments or conversations that never came to fruition, not even close.
I know. And you know what? When I look back on those situations where I worried about the outcome or how something was going to go, it never ended up being what I worried about. And I really want to stop worrying, right? And I try to remember those examples. When did I worry about it and come up with all of these horrible scenarios and didn't go that way at all? So I'm trying, but it's a work in progress for sure. Do you have any tips for anybody listening, like how they can sort of stop that rumination cycle?
So I want to give a very big caveat to all of this. All of my friends have seen me put in 5 years of intensive self work and I have learned so much. But I was a large case, and the universe knew that I was going to need some divine intervention. So she shortcut my program and gave me my spiritual awakening, which helped me so much. But one thing that I can tell you is, it sounds so woo woo, but it's the gratitude journal for me, in a sense that whatever I'm struggling with that day, like one of my biggest things is I'm not considered. So if I take my gratitude journal that day and write down 3 ways that I'm grateful that I was considered, it kind of builds on that momentum of, girl, your mind is playing tricks on you. You are loved, you are seen. Nothing is going the way that you're pretending that it is up there, so let that go.
You know, there was a great book that I read called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. And so you read it. And there's an example that she gives, and I can't remember what the terminology is, but I can share the example. You're reading the book, and she said, I want you to take the next minute and count everything that you see that's yellow. And so you take a minute off the book and you count everything you see that's yellow. And then she says, okay, now how many red things did you see? Right. And it's because when you're focusing on something, that is what
Yeah.
you see. And so it's really, really helpful to, when you're looking for things to be grateful for, is where I'm going with this, then you're going to start to look for. So I have at times in my life done the gratitude journal where I write the 3 things at the end of the day that happened that I was grateful for. And then you spend more time focusing on what you can write in your journal, and you see more things to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 things.
So,
One, from her book, the one thing that I remember is her saying that the universe must be out there thinking, I gave them everything that they could have ever wanted: fresh water, trees, hummingbirds, mountains, and they still sit around and worry that they're not enough. That has stuck with me for the last 5 years since reading that book. So here's another thing I struggle with, totally off topic, ADHD moment. I struggle with living in scarcity, even though that is not my reality. So each day I write down 3 ways that the universe has shown up for me that I have forgotten about or that I'm grateful for. And then it's like I've built this whole catalog of ways that I'm not living in scarcity. Everything I've asked for has been given and so much more. And it's just you build on that.
so I share that with you. I also struggle with that. And I don't know if it's related to ADHD, or the other thing that I have noticed about a lot of people with ADHD is that a lot of people with ADHD, especially women, it's the way it can express is impulsive spending, not having a future orientation. And so I remember growing up thinking, oh, there wasn't enough money, partly because it was my lived experience. I had those moments where I knew my mom did not have enough. And I remember the shopping, and that was a battle that we had. She kept bringing stuff in. And then she'd even say, look, I went to a garage sale. I'm like, but you didn't need it.
Yeah.
And and I will also say one thing that helped me, another Jen Sincero, hopefully she's listening, she'll come be on the podcast. She talks about thinking of money as an exchange of energy, which I found to be super helpful. So now I think of when I am going to give a tip, or I'm going to spend something that I maybe wouldn't have wanted to spend on my kids or on an experience, I think of it as an exchange of energy. And a really good example, I don't know if you remember during COVID, no one wanted to use cash. So all of a
Mm,
sudden that cash that we're sitting on had no value, right? It was just a piece
yeah.
of paper. So I really like that, but I struggle with that scarcity mindset. And I did just touch on something that I always like to interweave little things in these conversations. The way that I've learned that inattentive or ADHD can show up for anybody who has inattentive ADHD, but it's impulsive spending and it's poor eating choices or sugar cravings or binge eating. So I always like to weave those facts. And it seems to be pretty consistent with just about everybody that I know on the older side who didn't know that they had it. You can see those patterns. So
Yeah.
what would you tell an adult child? I know you're used to being the parent, giving the parenting advice, but what would you tell an adult child who is realizing that they were raised by an ADHD parent about maybe repairing the disappointment or soothing those parents? I mean, I don't know. What would your advice be?
Again, the universe gifted me a major shortcut, but I think that internally, before you even approach those conversations, I would see if the things that hurt you the most were because of ADHD. Maybe they didn't know that they had ADHD. Maybe the not showing up to parent teacher conferences was a sticking point. And then you realize, oh, my mom has time blindness, so she doesn't know the time or what's going on or anything like that. Or like my dad had 3 daughters. he wasn't the sole provider, but he was the majority provider. So he was stressed out all the time. And then, of course, that caused a little bit of emotional dysregulation. But then on top of the ADHD, the explosive, I used to say that my dad would go off on the smallest thing, but it was really, now that I'm 40, I can recognize that was just the tipping point. Everything that happened that day or that week or the things that I didn't see led to that explosion. But it could have been over something like, I remember rocks being on the roof when we were little. And he was like, "Who threw the rocks on the roof?" Like, "Dad, I don't know, but I laugh over that because he literally had a meltdown over the rocks on the roof. And it's just maybe internally recognizing the things that hurt you if they were part of their ADHD, and then addressing that and giving them a chance to know it and know how you feel and responding.
That's great. That's super helpful. Anything else that you want to share, keeping in mind that a lot of the people who are listening are probably grandparents who are now seeing their ADHD grandchildren and maybe watching their children parent these ADHD kids. What's your advice?
Ooh, this is so good because I actually just had a conversation with my dad on Father's Day that I will share. My dad is old school, and even though he knows he has ADHD, sometimes he doesn't recognize that in his grandchildren. And he said something like, "A spanking isn't going to hurt anyone." And I thought, okay, but also, is there another way? For my son, when he was a toddler, I'm not ashamed to say, I did pop his hand and it just didn't work. So I had to find other means. So I would just invite any grandparents out there, neurotypical or not, to just give their children a chance to parent differently for what works today that may or may not have worked way back in the day.
Do you think that one of the reasons that they are passing judgment or commenting is maybe their own feelings of inadequacy, like, oh, they're doing it differently because they don't like the way they were raised?
You would have to ask him that question, but I do think a lot of it comes from not just grandparents. I think that a lot of our parenting or decisions or shame comes from, what will people think of me? And maybe my dad thinks, what will people think of us if we go to a restaurant and my grandson's on his iPad? But it's not like, it doesn't bother me because unless he's on that iPad, I can't get him to sit at the table with us because his brain and his body's spinning. So that's just one tiny reflection. But I think it's just more so how we believe we will be perceived.
Okay, I'm going to sit with that. Okay. Any parting words or advice to somebody who's listening who, again, I'm really trying to gear it to, I'm just coming into this ADHD conversation. My grandchild was diagnosed. Now my child is realizing they have it. And now they're sending me this podcast because they want me to hear it. And I am just this. What would your advice to them?
I think to learn what ADHD is and what ADHD is not. I think that we are still on a very outdated conception of ADHD is just hyperactive little boys, when ADHD is emotional dysregulation, time blindness, organizational skills. So much, there's so much in there. I think there's like 8 or 9 executive functions that it affects. So moving away from boys will be boys and coming into, this is an actual issue and this is what we need to work on.
I think that's a great answer. I will share with you that because I just completed my ADCA ADHD coach training, I was with a group of other people who also had ADHD and were learning the way that I have been learning. So not just the course content, but pulling out other things. And I, even as early as I think it was like 2 weeks ago, I learned about the T-Rex arms. And you may not have even heard about this, that a lot of people with ADHD or autism sleep in the T-Rex position, kind of with their arms curled up to their body. And that's the reason that a lot of people with ADHD have wrist issues. And so I've actually talked to a few people since discovering this sure, including me, I have had a wrist issue. And I didn't even know that I slept in a TRX position because I go to bed with my arm up. But I woke up
Yeah.
the first morning and that I discovered, and my arms were curled into my body.
Really?
So just little things. And I discovered the connection with migraine headaches and fibromyalgia being very common with people with ADHD. And that was how we discovered my mom had it because she had had both of those. So then I learned about, I think it's a proprioception. And this happened to me. Like if I am in my hyperfocus mode, everything falls away. I'm not hungry. I'm not tired. My brain wants to do that task. And I remember being pregnant and skipping meals, and my ex-husband saying, like, how can you be skipping meals? Was it healthy for the baby or for me? I was not aware of those signals in my body. So there's so much. We're continuing to learn even more. But one of the things that I loved, and one of the reasons that I'm such an advocate for building this Grandma Has ADHD community, is that when I talk to somebody with ADHD, we just get each other. We can take the mask off and we can just,
Yeah.
no, like you said in the beginning, no judgment. So
I think it's really cool how you look back and how you said you have those core friends who just get you. They understand that this is you. When I look back, I recognize that most of them are neurodivergent themselves. It's kind of like you find your people along the way. And that's why they may get you because they also can relate.
yeah, that's so true. And we didn't even know that. We just knew that we were alike. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're wrapping up this podcast, one of the things with ADHD, at least for me, because I can only share my experience, is that I'll have a conversation or I'll do an interview and I'll be like, oh, I wish I had said that. Is there anything else that you're going to be, if you don't say it? And I also want people to be able to find you and your podcast. So we'll link to the show notes. It's called
Yeah.
Chaos and Caffeine. Anything else that you want to share with our audience? Because I know, you shared this was your first interview. So thank you. I'm privileged to get to do that.
Thank you. I am sure that I will click off and be like, oh my gosh, that's what I should have said. But I can't think of anything right now other than not just giving your parents grace, but giving yourself grace in the moments, giving your kids some grace because everyone is dysregulated. And thank you for having me. If your audience is listening, the one thing they can do is go and give Jami a 5-star review because her podcast is amazing and helpful.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I love your interview style. And this was amazing. And we are definitely kindred spirits. So thank you so much for being on the show, Danielle Kelly. Thank you to everybody who listened. And as Danielle said, yes, please give me a 5-star review. That's kind of hard to ask for, but it really does help the people find this podcast. And again, find us on Facebook. That is where we are building a Facebook group for people who get us. And I'm just on a mission to make sure that we destigmatize ADHD and recognize that just because you are growing older doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to grow. So thank you so much for listening. The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.